Imposter syndrome, customer service, branding, personal branding, they are all the subjects and conversations I get to have with my very special guest today on the podcast, Jane Anderson. Seriously, guys, I am so excited to share this episode with you. So let's get into it. Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Well, hey there, and welcome to episode 41 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I sincerely appreciate you making me one of them. Today's episode is brought to you by my new downloadable, The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Facebook Ads. This workbook is full of exercises and tips and tricks on how you can get your first Facebook ad up, running, and hitting the goals that you need it to. So go and download it now at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au, and you will see my freebies there. Today, like I said, I have a very special guest. Her name is Jane Anderson, and it's absolutely no lie that you are going to be blown away by this interview. We talk everything from imposter syndrome to customer service to branding to personal branding and all things in between. It has to be one of my favorite interviews on the podcast yet, and I'm really itching to share it with you. But of course, let's do the discovery of the week before we get into the interview, and the discovery of the week is something worth listening to as well. So have you heard of the Facebook Creator Studio? It's new. Well, relatively new, I'm pretty sure. It's been around for a couple of months that I know of, and it's put out by Facebook, and you are simply going to love it. Why are you going to love it? Because it's going to simplify your life. The whole idea of this podcast, in its simplest form, it's an easy way to manage everything you do on Facebook business pages, and if you have multiple pages like me, it's going to make things super simple for you. You can post from there, you can go live from there, you can schedule posts from in there, you can see amazing analytics from there. It's like normal Facebook, but it's all in one place, and it has a lovely and clean and fresh dashboard that you are going to love. And if you're interested, there's a super new feature in there that can help you make money from your videos, just like people do on YouTube. I haven't used it as yet, but I have been watching some videos on it just to see what it's all about and gathering a little bit of knowledge around it. I can't recommend highly enough that you go and check out Facebook Creator Studio. You can get there from your Facebook page, but look, it's just easier to Google it. So go to Google and type in Facebook Creator Studio. I'd love to know your thoughts and start some conversations about it. So head into the Facebook group, Like-Minded Business Owners, and let's have a chat about this little discovery. It has the opportunity to rock your world, baby. And as always, just a little disclaimer, my discoveries are just that, and I am in no way affiliated with them, but I promise to tell you if I ever am. I just love them. I love the response you give me from them, and I really love sharing things that will make your life simpler. And if you have a little discovery that I can share with my audience, I would really love to hear from you. So let's get into the interview with Jane Anderson. As I said earlier, I am so very excited to have you hear this episode. It's out of this world fabulous. Well, at least I think it is. I was so happy and ecstatic when Jane agreed to come in the podcast. We talk a little bit at the start about imposter syndrome. And to be honest, it's certainly what I was feeling when I reached out to Jane. She's amazing and she's very successful. So I thought, who am I to ask her? I'm not really in her league to be asking for such favors as to come on my podcast. But alas, It was all in my head. We connected, we laughed, and we had some great conversations on and off air. And well, apparently I am good enough to have her on my podcast because, of course, I did. Jane is a strategic communications expert with over 20 years' experience in personal branding and content creation and has worked with well over 50,000 people. Her clients include Virgin Australia, Lego, IKEA, and Rio Tinto. She actually has a podcast of her own, The Jane Anderson Show, where she's interviewed world-leading experts such as Seth Godin and has also been featured in Business Insider, Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, The Courier Mail, and Sky Business News. Jane's blog was recently voted the top 10 branding blogs in Australia and in the top 30 branding gurus globally. She's won numerous awards, being nominated for the Telstra Businesswoman's Award, and she's also the author of 6 books, including her latest, Trusted, The Level Above Influence. See, I told you she was fabulous. So let's get into it. Let's welcome Jane to the podcast. Thank you so much, Jane, for coming on the podcast today. I was super excited when I got the email back to say that you had time to come on. So super welcome to you. For those who perhaps don't know Jane Anderson, could you tell us just a little bit about who Jane Anderson is and what your business is about?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jen. I'm very grateful to be able to work with you. What an opportunity, and to be able to connect with your listeners. So I do mostly what I call strategic communications. So I work with personal branding, then I work with content strategy and a bit of leadership development. So particularly around helping leaders to engage their teams. So a bit across all three. And so I work with experts in their field. So particularly people who are trying to build a personally branded business. So if they're operating under their name.com and they want to be a consultant or an expert or a coach, but they are particularly building a brand under their personal name. Then I might also sometimes I work with CEOs and helping them to build their legacy work. So it might be unpacking their IP, all the years of work that they have, they're thinking about retiring and unpacking that. Or I might work with the personal brand of leaders within organisations. So, we see it a lot with women, particularly for building their brands. And then what else do I do? Oh, and a little bit of social media. So, because all this ties in together, doesn't it? Like you go, oh, well, you've got branding, like who you are, but you can't sell a secret. You've got to go and communicate that brand. So I kind of get people who go, oh, I'm trying to work out content, but we have to do brand in the first place. So we go, that's why you're not saying anything, because you haven't worked out what your brand is. Yeah. So I dabble in all those places. Yeah.
Yeah, right. A busy little bee. Jane, one of the reasons why I asked you to come on the podcast was, I'm on your email list, and one of the emails you sent not so long ago was talking about imposter syndrome and, why we don't put ourselves out there and things like that. And as soon as I read that, I thought, I just need to get you on the podcast because I hear it, I see it, and to be totally honest, I actually feel it a little bit myself sometimes. So why don't we put ourselves out there? Where has imposter syndrome come from, and how the heck do we get rid of the little creature?
I know, it's a bugger, isn't it? It just, it's so, and at times it can be really crippling for people, like depending on just how extreme that feeling is. I remember when I joined, I joined this business program, and I remember walking in the door, and it was first day, and I felt like first day at school, and there were all these, amazing experts and best-selling authors and all these people. I was like, oh my God, I am so in the wrong room. And I was like, well, I know I'm meant to be here, but I'm like, please don't anybody ask me a question, because I don't know. So I know what that feeling's like. Or even if you're going through a tough time, maybe you're going through a tough time in your business, and maybe you're trying to position yourself, it's the irony if you're positioning yourself as this expert at blah, but you're actually, really struggling yourself, maybe even in your own IP or your own expertise. And so I know that feeling. So what we do know about the imposter syndrome, now, by the way, I'm not a counsellor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a researcher in the field, but I've done a little bit of reading about it because I've struggled with it so much myself. And what we do know is that about 70% of people, so more often than not women more than men, but men do still are starting to struggle with it a little bit more, is what the research is saying. But we know that about 70% of people overall will experience the imposter syndrome or fear of being found out or that feeling of not being good enough or smart enough. They'll experience that emotion at some stage in their career or their life or in their business. And so we do know where it comes from. Where it comes from is mostly two things. It either comes from our family dynamics as we've grown up. So it could be role modeling from family members, or stories or perceptions that we've made up just based on just normal growing up. And the other thing can be culture. So it can be just the dynamics of whether it's race, whether it's age, whether it's gender, whatever it might be. So we do know it comes from there. And then in terms of how to get rid of it, I guess I can only share how I've gone about it. And one of the things that I think that I've had to do, well, let's talk about where, in terms of how do you, I think the first thing is knowing that it's happening.
Yes.
Because, I don't know if you found this, but I know for me is that the first time I ever heard of the term, I was like, imposter syndrome. So there's other people who experience this. I thought it was just me. And so this is a thing. Okay, it's a thing. So I think the first thing is just realizing that you're not the only one. I think
I heard it first on a podcast and I was in my car and I was like, oh my God, yes, that's me. Yeah. There's a name for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I was the same, when I first heard it, I was something like that, either an article or it was a podcast or something. And I just could not believe that someone was able to articulate this feeling that I had. And so it's that sense of you have a lower belief in yourself than the people around you. And so you don't feel like you're coming up against the expectations that people have. And how it shows up is in anxiety, lower confidence, self-sabotage sometimes comes up, and you're dwelling on mistakes or things that you've done wrong in the past, and in particular negative self-talk. So it's just how you're speaking to yourself. So I think for those who might be listening and going, what are you talking about? What's this imposter syndrome? The good news is that even though it's called the imposter syndrome, it's not actually a psychological condition. So you don't have a disease. So, which I think is a relief. So even though it's called, it's got that term, but it's a little bit tongue in cheek, I suppose, too, in that you're not going to find it in any psychological journals or anything like that. But what I think how I've had to overcome it was, the first thing was just knowing that this is a thing, and that other people experience it, and that you can actually do something about it, and just being conscious and aware. Because when you're not conscious and aware that this is something that happens to a lot of people, then you just continue on in suffering, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my awareness,
and that's quite frustrating.
Yeah. I think my awareness came from when people would say things to me that I had absolutely no idea that was me. Like, that they'd say to me, oh my God, you're so confident. And I'd be like, oh no, like, you're not inside my tummy. So that's when my realization started to come, that what I was feeling was not what I was projecting, which,
so these people around you have this belief about you that you're going, they're so not congruent with how I feel about myself, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, I think, is knowing that that's what's going on, and this is a thing, and that you have choice. And then the second thing that I found that has worked for me is that I had to just really ask myself, is this actually true? going, well, okay, these people think that I'm a rock star at this, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm so not. And, I always think of Mike Myers. There's a quote by Mike Myers who said, I'm waiting for the zero talent police to turn up any day, which I loved. So I think the next question is is it true, or is it just maybe it's a perception, particularly when you're going through branding, which we'll talk about, is you're projecting an image that you're having to step into. So people are perceiving things a certain way. So it's just knowing, okay, is it actually true, or is it just the way I'm speaking to myself? Am I not actually being my own best friend here? Am I putting myself down?
Yeah.
So being part of that best friend, I think a big part of it is because if you're not your own best friend, you're telling you that's negative self-talk is like a repeated script, isn't it? Like it's over and over and over, like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, or you're batting above your weight, like you're in the wrong crowd, like, you don't know anything. And so that self-talk, I think something I found kind of interesting was that I found a piece of people that even 80% of someone who is not depressed or going through any psychological problems experiences 80% of their self-talk is negative. So I thought, when I found that piece of research, I was like, okay, so what we've got to do is I've got to change the script. So the script that's on default, that is just running, is the average person is just running with a negative script. So in that case, it's human behavior. So actually just got to change the script. So things like, first thing I had to do is really catch myself saying terrible things to myself, like even just little things like, oh, you're an idiot, oh, you're stupid, or how did you do that? Like, just not speaking to myself that way, like, and just going, oh, okay, well, there you go, you learn something new every day, or oh, well, there you go, I'll do that a bit different next time. Just changing the way you speak to yourself. And then the last one I have to share with you is I play games. So, and I'm not a manipulative person. This was something I had to learn, because I'm normally a pretty straight shooter, but this is something I learned from other people was, and this is part of branding, is that I had to play a game. So one of the things that I did when, or if I'm stuck in something like this, I have to let's go into just pretending and let's play a game. So one of the things I did was, at one point in my business, I was going backwards fast. Like I was really struggling. So my sales weren't up, and just I was repositioning, and I was just not having much fun at all. And so what I did was and the challenge was, of course, is that I'm here out talking to people to help them to grow their businesses, but I was going through repositioning, which means sometimes you can take a hit in your revenue while you're trying to reposition. And so I just pretended that I was a black belt in karate. So I was like, okay, let's imagine that you're a black belt in karate, like you're a ninja. And so I actually normally wear a lot of color. I always wear hot pinks or greens or something like that. But so what I did was just to play a mindset game for myself, and I wore black for 6 months. I didn't wear any other color.
Wow.
And I just had, and it was just me telling myself, you're a black belt, you're a ninja, like you're okay. So that's one of the games that I sometimes do if I'm struggling. I just go, I've got to get my head around this, and just pretend. If somebody was a black belt, what would they be doing? How would I be carrying myself? All those things, because that self-talk can take over. So that's one thing that I do. And the other game that I play with myself is in business, if I'm trying to, because often the imposter can come up when you're trying to level up, can't it? Like if you're trying to take things to the next level, then you're going, I don't know if I'm good enough. So a little hack that I do to deal with that is I send myself inquiries. And so I go, I'll go, and it's just a game. They're just games that you got to play to just hack your mindset and just disrupt it. So I'll go, hi, Jane. My name's Sarah, or I'll just make it up. So I'll just say, hi there, Jane. And I'll just go, okay, imagine you wanting to work with this person, like this dream client. I'll pretend that I'm the dream client and I'll send inquiries to myself.
Yeah.
And so it just puts your head in the game a little bit as well. So they're probably, I guess, two of the main things that I do. I'll just, you've got to, otherwise it's too debilitating, isn't it?
Yeah, they're amazing tips. Thank you so much for sharing those. That's I love the whole tricking yourself into things. Yeah. I have some games myself, but we probably won't share those on the podcast in this episode. But yeah, no, we all have our little games that we actually play to try and nudge us on. And I guess, the second part of that, if we let ourselves get down to the fact that we let imposter syndrome take over, we stay in our comfort zone. And I think, that can be really dangerous if you don't step outside of your comfort zone. I know for myself, I get so many butterflies, and I know that's my signal that I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. And you just got to kind of embrace it. But there's some real danger staying in your comfort zones, isn't there?
Well, that's the thing, we're just not set up in businesses, and just we're in constant change and disruption. So if we're going to stay in our comfort zone and not do anything different or try the next thing or innovate, then I think if you're not growing, you're dying. So you're at, we might be in our comfort zone and think, oh, okay, I'll just play it safe. But the irony is that the safer you try to make it, you're actually at more risk, aren't you? Because you think, oh, well, I can just control this. If I just control that, because that fear of stepping out of your comfort zone is that I'm out of control. I don't know. You're sort of surrendering a little bit, aren't you? Like you're letting go to be able to see, okay, well, let's see what happens. But if you're in your comfort zone, you can sort of control everything. But the irony is that you actually lose control because there's no innovation, there's no change, and you can't grow then because you haven't tested anything, you haven't tried anything. I don't think it's just about staying in the same place anymore. I think you just get left behind.
Yeah. I had, we were talking about games before. One of the little things that I did, it's going back 3 years ago now. It was a New Year's Eve resolution for myself, and my best friend and I decided we were going to have 12 months of not saying no. Now you might think, why didn't we have 12 months of saying yes? Well, it was 3:00 on New Year's Eve at night, so not saying no, double negatives, was the only thing we could think of at the time. But I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't have had those 12 months of not saying no. I just said yes to opportunities, and I worked it out as I went along, and I pushed down my comfort zone as far as I possibly could. So, just push down those butterflies and get on with it.
That's it. And you survive, I think, that sometimes I love that, because the more you say yes to, like, the more opportunities come from that, doesn't it? Like you would have found, because you said yes to something, it led to something else, and it led to something else, and those things would never have happened. And as a result, your confidence grows as a result of stepping out of the comfort zone, because we sort of think, oh, I'll stay in the comfort zone because that's where I feel confident. But your confidence actually grows from putting yourself into those situations where you get butterflies and where you get, stepping into that fear a little bit, is that you go, oh, I actually did that. I was okay. Well, because then, then you grow, and that comfort zone just starts to expand, doesn't it? And your confidence kicks in.
In the essence of full disclosure, I'm pretty sure my first 2 speaking gigs that I had, I actually was in the toilet beforehand, just we won't have the expletives on the podcast, but I was actually getting rid of my dinner up the top way. I was
oh, poor thing.
Oh my goodness. So luckily that has definitely died down, but I still, get butterflies. But yeah, I was absolutely beside myself when the first couple of times that I actually had to do public speaking. So, but yeah, push through it, push through it. So I guess as far as comfort zones go and that sort of thing, clearly when you're trying to build a personal brand and getting back to where we started, I guess, when you were saying, if people are building a brand under their name, then clearly you've got to leave your comfort zone long behind when you're trying to do something like that.
You just have to, like if you look at when you're building your brand, and regardless of whether it's a business brand or a personal brand, it's all about reinvention. You've got to stay relevant with your market, and you've got to stay relevant to your clients. You've got to continue to grow. You've got to continue to retain those clients as well as keep attracting new ones. Because if you're not relevant and you're not reinventing, then people just move on. They're not going to stay with you. They'll go, oh, you're out of touch. The reason why they work with you is because you're the translator. You're the one who's making sense of this world to help them. So yeah, with branding, what I typically, I think of it like, it's like, I think a great example of someone like this is Kylie Minogue. If you look at her years of, back and watching her on, what was the street on Neighbours?
Oh, Ramsay
Young
Street.
Talent on Ramsay Street. And, her beautiful permed hair. And now if she still kept her permed hair and today, like we're probably going to go, geez, that's a bit 80s. It's maybe time to level up your brand a little bit. So when you're selling is that we have to constantly stay relevant. We're staying core to a sense of who we are and core to our values and our authenticity. But if you look at Kylie Minogue or people like Madonna, U2, some of these, I think musicians are a great example, and bands, how they constantly reinvent, and they're still core, they're still authentic to who they are, but they've got to stay relevant, and they've got to be able to keep contributing to their customers and their fans in their case. So because fans want new songs, they still love the classics, but we've got to be able to give them something new. That's why they love us, because they love because I think the other thing too is your brand is you're essentially about a creative self-expression. So if you're really building a brand, you're understanding what's going on out in the world for people, and they're looking to you for advice and to help them make sense of it all for themselves. They trust you. That's why they come to you as a brand. So they're relying on you to help them. And if you can do that, you've got to stay in touch with what problems are, what's going on, to help them to be able to make decisions. A brand, and that's the irony of a personal brand is actually not even about you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you kind of get the sense of who you are, but then you're like, actually, I realize that I'm just a vehicle to make this come to life.
To serve others.
It really is.
Yeah. So what makes a good brand? What makes a good personal brand in your eyes?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because I think personal brand is similar to building a business brand, but I say this, except there's a human that we're building this brand for, as opposed to an entity and a group of people. But when you're building a personal brand, I say there's kind of three things that make it all work. The first one is you've got to have a strong sense of clarity about who are you, what's your background, what are the stories you've got, what's your vision, what's your purpose, who do you serve, what problems are you solving, and where are you trying to go? What do you want to do with this? Now, sometimes not everybody is sometimes sure, because if they're starting out, they're not quite sure about where this will go. So, but it's just going, okay, well, if you just had a bit of an idea, what would it look like? So first sense is a strong sense of clarity. Who are you? Where are you trying to go? And who do you serve? The second one is communication. So you can't sell a secret. So it's not very well to have us go, okay, I'm clear about who I am. I don't need to do anything now. Everybody will just turn up. That just doesn't happen. So then you've got to work out, well, what are the communication channels that I'm going to make my brand come to life? So is it podcasting like this? Is it blogging? Is it speaking at events? Is it running workshops? Is it speaking? Is it writing a book? Is it like, how are you going to get your brand to come to life? Because a brand is not just a logo. It's about the expression of that brand so that it attracts the right clients.
I think you need to repeat that sentence just a little bit. A brand is not a logo.
That's right. That's kind of like the last thing we kind of worry about. We just get clear on all the other stuff first. Brand is not a logo. That's right.
Sorry, I interrupted
no, good
you.
pickup. Yeah, well, we do get caught up on that, don't we? Because we go, oh, do you do branding? And I go, yeah. Then they go, oh, can you do this logo? Oh, I'm not a logo designer. I didn't get the gift of the graphic design side of it. But you've got to work out your identity before you can start creating visuals. And you would see that all the time with the work you do with social media, Facebook, particularly Facebook ads and things like that.
Yeah.
So first one's clarity. Second one is communication. So what are the communication channels? So how are we going to get this to work? Is it newsletters? Is it DMs? Is it chatbots? Is it like, there's so much change going on. Is it, the future of this at the moment is sound. So if you've got Google Home devices and all that sort of stuff, and Alexa Home is, if you want to get into homes, that's like we've just released a lot of stuff for Alexa skills in my stuff. So there's a lot of it. So the future is voice.
Yes.
So we're sort of helping people with that.
Yeah. I had just a side note, I had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about just this, because she works in retail corporate, and we were trying to talk about voice activated marketing. Well, we had to switch our phones off on it, and because they kept coming on every time we say something about Alexa or say something about Siri, they would say, I don't understand. And we were just, it ended up to be a very big giggle feast because we just couldn't talk because our phones kept interrupting us.
Isn't that funny? It's like trying to talk with a 4-year-old going Alexa.
Spelling it out. Anyway, made for a very funny podcast, but yes. So
that would have been funny.
Sorry, I interrupted you again.
No, all good. I love it. We got clarity, communication was the other one, working out what channels to get it out to. And then the third one is control. And control is about when things go wrong. So to really build a solid brand, whether it's a personal brand or a business brand, is things go wrong. You're only human. That's life. Stuff happens. And it's not about what happens. It's about what happens next that will define the brand. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you look at, I think a really interesting example that's even in the news today is about Alan Joyce's, his salary. He's got something like 23 million in his salary. Now that's headline news today in the papers. And so there's a lot of people saying, that's way too much. Australia should take on the UK's approach for ASX 100 listed companies, that CEOs should not be paid that much. There's all this stuff in the paper about about his pay level now, or his income. Now, it's not to me whether to say it's right or wrong, and I'm not really that bothered by it. But what their PR team have to do, because Alan Joyce is still the face of a brand and he has his own personal brand. Everybody has a personal brand, whether they like it or not. But the question is what are they going to do about that next? Do they let it lie? Do they actually do something about that? Do they address the media? They probably won't, because people complain about ASX 100 CEOs' salaries anyway. But equally, if somebody, I think about even a personal brand like George Columbaris after the whole MasterChef situation, there was a lot. They've got to take control of the narrative. So if you look at what happened with George Columbaris, there was a lot. So he didn't go ahead with the next contract for MasterChef because with all the bad media that was going on as a result of his restaurants, there was a lot of speculation and a lot of stories coming out in the media. He was interviewed on Sunday night on the TV show, I think it was Sunday night, and where he but he needed to do that interview to get the narrative to settle, and he needed to take control. So control is when your brand shows up most authentic. It's when things go wrong, what do you do next? Because that's a true sign of building trust in a brand, and trust is the currency that we're working with when we're building a brand.
Mm-hmm.
And it also determines the character of the person. So, you know, are they someone to just shy away or not deal with things? Or, you know, or if you as a brand are strong and you want people to have confidence and trust you, is things will go wrong. You're human. People are pretty forgiving as long as you solve the problem, as long as you reset the narrative or fix it or be honest or whatever you need to do to take control of it. And if you can get those three things right, I reckon you've got a good chance at making a really good personal brand.
Yeah. I just really love what you've just said, but just picking up on it a little bit, you know, even for non-personal brand, you know, for the small business owners that might be listening,
Yeah.
it is kind of like that bad review on Facebook or that bad Google review or that bad comment. It is, that doesn't define your brand. It's what you do about it that all your fans are watching to see how you react. That will be a bit of a defining moment. So, you know, ignorance is not bliss.
No.
Things like that, but it's so true. Even down the micro level of, you know, a solopreneur or something like that, it isn't what other people, you know, do or say. It's how you react to it and how you overcome that.
Absolutely. And, you know, like I grew up working with personal brands since I was 14 years old. And I worked for Sir Robert Mathers, which is the founder, or he was the son of the founder of the Mathers family shoe chain. So he was knighted by the Queen for his services to the business community years ago. So he was one of those 80s style entrepreneurs, and
wow.
I was very young when I worked with him and the family. I worked with them for 12 years, and Sir Robert, you know, there was again a small business, or it was a small business that grew into a large business and ended up selling to a large organisation. But you know, Sir Robert used to always say to me that you know, our brand and our reputation in the community is crucial, and how it shows up most is when things go wrong. So if you're in a small business and you're listening to this, I reckon the best thing you can look at is, like you said, particular online reviews, things like that, and then your customer service. Like if somebody comes in and complains, or if somebody wants a refund, or the, you know, like in our case when I was with Sir Robert, if somebody brought back a pair of shoes that you know, that fell apart, or, you know, the stitching broke or whatever, is, you know, it's got to be the same level of service as when they bought them, as opposed to them feeling like when they came back in that they're suddenly a problem. Is that, you know, we have the same level of service regardless of whether you're coming in to buy or you're coming back, because we've got to rebuild that trust with that customer, with that brand. So, and for small businesses, particularly if they're listening to this, is, you know, back when I worked with him, was that we didn't have social media, so it was pretty contained. The old figures were, you know, 9 people, someone would tell 9 people if they had a bad experience.
Yeah.
But hello, social media, that's kind of changed a little bit, hasn't it?
But I also think
that, but I don't know if you find this, but I think a lot of small business owners are really afraid of negative customer reviews, or that people go on and troll or whatever. And, you know, if you can take control of the narrative, comment, do what you can, show that you're really trying to be committed to customer service, people see that as well, and they can also see if people are being annoying. Like if you've got pretty good customer service, and then they've got one person who it hasn't worked out, and you've tried to deal with it, you've mentioned it, you've talked about it, you've replied, you know, you're still okay. Your brand is still going to be okay.
Yeah, I know. Certainly, it seems to be our human nature, though. And I know in my retail days, it was no different, where, you know, we can have 20 fantastic customers, but it's that one grumpy one that, you know, keeps us up at night. And, you know, you can have a 0.9 review on Google or Facebook, but it's that one that really bugs you. And I don't know how we get over that, other than, you know, we just have to go, okay, I did my best, move right along.
That's it. And yeah, and also like just, you know, not every brand is for everybody. So if at the end of the day that person is not the right customer for your business, that's okay. There's
Yeah.
plenty of other people who can help them. And I think sometimes we can get worried that we're going to ostracize certain clients, or we're going to be, just at the end of the day, sometimes clients are just not the right person for you, or some customers, but you've got to stay congruent to your brand, still maintain your integrity and your trust, but at the same time is sometimes not being afraid to, sometimes if they're not the right person to be working with,
Yep.
sometimes you've got to be okay to let them go too.
Yeah, yeah, and I certainly see sometimes you are bearing the brunt of their really bad day, and they just
Yeah.
happen to be taking it out on you. So sometimes you've got to sit back and think, this isn't about me or my business.
Yeah.
I know I did my best. It's actually about them, and dealing with it that way. I think I heard, I either read somewhere. In fact, it might have been Rachel Hollis or something like that. I might have been reading one of her books, and she was saying there's a difference between apologizing and apologizing. So you can apologize for someone, the fact that they feel that way, but not
Yeah.
actually apologize as though I'm wrong, I'm sorry. It's kind of like, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Because sometimes
Yeah.
that's all they want. They just want an apology. So, yeah.
Yeah, and to be heard.
Yes.
Sometimes they're
That's
just not heard. And if they can just be heard, then sometimes half your battle's sorted out.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know who said this saying, but I do love it when it comes to branding. So I remember reading a quote somewhere that said, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos said that. I think it's
There you go.
yeah, it's such a great quote, because, I mean, he's a great example of what that is. Like, people know what Amazon is. If someone says, "Oh, who's Amazon?" If Amazon's not there, if he's not there, that somebody's
Yes.
able to, because that's the categorization or the pigeonholing or positioning that somebody has in their mind about you. So if the positioning is right, if somebody says, "Oh, Amazon just sells books," then we go, okay, this customer, if they're saying that's what Amazon is, then okay, we've got a positioning problem with this customer. Who else is like that? Okay, we've got to work on the brand and the communication strategy to get this person to realize that we just don't sell books.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great quote.
If anyone's listening and they sort of think that they would like to, maybe they're in business, but they think that, having a personal brand might be their next step to elevate their business, what's the first thing that they should do? Where do they start with that, other than getting themselves a logo?
Yeah, logo's the last thing. I reckon, if you're looking at building a personal brand, the first thing that before I do anything, I just get them to go and have a look at other personal brands. So could you actually do this? Because what I find is that sometimes I attract clients who come to me and they want me to work with them, and then they go, "Oh, but you make it look so easy, and you're doing all these videos, and you do this, and you do blogs, and you do podcasts." And then when it comes to them actually doing it, they kind of go, "Oh wow, this is really confronting. This is really scary stuff. I'm extremely vulnerable here. I don't know if I'm good enough," and all the imposter syndrome comes back in. So I think sometimes it can be going into this it's the good thing is you can start small. So just starting to write a blog. What are you passionate about? What do you love? Then as you're starting to sort of work out, okay, is this something that am I passionate about teaching people and educating people and serving people? Because if you're doing it just so that you can get 50,000 followers on Instagram, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You're doing that because it's a popularity contest.
Yeah.
This is definitely not a popularity contest. It might look like it, but it's definitely not. Because at the end of the day, it's got to be commercially smart, and you need to, you might have this idea that you want to save the world on your particular area of expertise or what you're passionate about, but at the end of the day, it's got to be commercial. So you've got to be serious that it's a business and not a hobby. So I suggest to people, follow people, actually think about there's some great books around that I usually send a few books out to people. There's a book which is called The Thought Leaders Practice, which is by a guy called Matt Church, which I think is a really great book. And it's about the strategy behind if you want to build a personal brand, and around revenue, getting your revenue up to, you know, if you want to get to 500K in your revenue, here's what that looks like, to million plus, here's how all that works. And the other thing that I also just try to also help people to realise is that when you're going into a business like this, is the difference in revenue, and you would see this with your clients as well, is that people say, I just want to replace my job. I just want to replace the income from my job.
Yeah.
And I'll go, okay, so how much are you earning? And they go, I'm earning, like, might be 100,000, say. Like, most clients I've worked with have got about 20 years experience. So if I want to replace that, and we go, okay, so do you realize that if you sell 100,000, at the end of the day, you'll probably only take home, by the time you take out expenses, super, and your tax, you'll probably only take home about 30,000 out of that. Mm. And then they go, oh. So you've got to really be able to have some great selling skills and marketing skills. What was that?
Better make that $250,000 then.
You got it. Or we go for $1 million. So for most clients, I work between 750 to $1 million. So yep. I go, if you can do that and hold that for 10 years, then you're on the path to being financially independent. So to be able to, you can start small, so it's good, but at the same time is that you've also got to be able to sell. So if you think that just being able to write your blog and just being able to write books is going to do that, it's not going to do that. So I do a little bit of reality checking for some people, and they might go away and have a bit more of a think about it and come back. But for those who are really committed, is I often say, and this is a big part of the imposter syndrome, the thing that where I noticed where people really fly is they've got to get around the right people. They've got to get around because you need to create a new social norm for yourself. So it's not normal to do what we do. It's not normal to sit here and do podcasting, and it's not normal to sit here and write blogs, and only about 1% of the population actually create any of this kind of stuff. And people around you will say, why don't you just go back to work? Why don't you just get a job? Why don't you just, so you have to get around people who have either done it before or doing on the same journey as you, because it will help you to feel, Brene Brown talks about that innate sense of, when we know that we belong and we know that we're loved and we're going to be okay, and that sense of safety around us, then we're more likely to be able to go through this. This is a transformational thing to go through. So if you're able to get the right people around you, the right advisors, and get in amongst a community of other people who are doing it as well, it's absolutely the best thing that you could do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say that even though it is hard work building a business and building a brand and all that sort of thing, surrounding myself with like-minded people to push me, challenge me, and celebrate with me was the absolute best thing I have ever done. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're more likely to try things, aren't you? Like, you've got to innovate and you've got to launch things out into the market and do things that you've got to be really brave. So when you sort of see something, you go watch someone else and you're like, oh, they did that. Maybe I could do that. So, it's such a change. So yeah, I agree. If you can get the right people around you, get in a community and a tribe of people, whether it's meetup groups, whether it's small business groups, whether it's local associations. But I think there's other places around. Like, I've been part of Thought Leaders Business School for 5 years, so I'm on faculty in there. It's a great place, but there's lots of other different platforms or groups that you can get involved in to just get started. And you know what? The best thing is if you're in a job, or even for those people who are in businesses, like if you're listening to this and you go, I don't know if I want a personal brand, you can still have a small business brand, but you can still set up yourname.com that is, and you can still become the expert to kind of be the rainmaker for your business as well. So people buy from people at the end of the day, don't they?
They do. I think I've said H to H, human to human, about 1 million times
Oh,
already.
really? Yeah. You're spot on. And we know that the future of business and future of work, if you look at, I coach a couple of futurists, but if you look at someone like, I've just been doing some speaking with Chris Riddell at MDRT, which is the $1 Million Roundtable Conference for Financial Advisors that was in Sydney a few weeks ago. And even Chris Riddell, everything that he shares is all about, we've got so much digital, is the human to human is what will help people to connect and help you to grow. So if you can bring more of you, automations and all that sort of stuff is nice, but your edge will be your humanness.
Yeah, your human is what will make you different and make you stand out from that very crowded, busy world that we live in. Absolutely. Jane, this has been sensational. I cannot thank you enough for coming on. I think we have gone full circle today, and I really think
had a great time. I have.
There is so much gold in this podcast. I'm so happy to have had you on. If you've said something that has really resonated with someone here today, what's the best way that they can get in contact with you?
Oh, yeah. You can jump on either my website, so it's jane-anderson.com. You can jump on LinkedIn, so I'm on there. There's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the works is all around. And what I might even give you, Jen, for your listeners who might find this helpful, is that if you're trying to work out, am I doing enough? Because most people that I work with, they go, yeah, I've kind of got a sense of my brand. I know what I'm passionate about. Or equally, if you're a small business owner, is what I find is most people go, their fear is that they're being noisier than what they really are. Like they're going, I don't want to put so much content up, and I don't want to send out newsletters because I'm worried people are going to not follow me anymore, and it's hard enough to get followers, let alone lose them. So what I might do, if you like, is I'll give your listeners a link to it's called the Expert to Influencer. It's the influencer indicator. So it just helps you to measure where exactly your communication gaps are in being able to build your communication strategy. So you can see the gaps. You'll see, okay, well, and you'll get your report back straight away, and you can just see. So it's normally $80 on the website, but I'll give you a link for free for the listeners, and then if they want to go on and have a go at it, they can see exactly where their gaps are. So I'm happy to include that.
Thank you, Jane. That'd be great. So if you're in the bath or out running or in the car, I will have that link in the show notes, so don't stress about that. But again, thank you so much for coming on, Jane. I have absolutely loved this, and you are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, and you. Thanks for having me.
So how was that, my friends? How much did you love that conversation? Seriously, sometimes I feel like the luckiest girl alive to be able to do what I do and make connections like I make, and being able to put out such amazing content into the big wide world to help you all, just like the podcast today. Serious love is coming your way definitely today. I really hoped you enjoyed it as much as me. I know it was a bit longer than usual, but I really hope you stuck around to the end. I'd love to hear what parts you loved the most. So head into the Facebook group Like-Minded Business Owners. If you haven't joined yet, the link's in the show notes, or just go to Facebook and search Like-Minded Business Owners. I will, of course, be back next Thursday with more marketing know-how and another great discovery. If this was one of your favorites, then please feel free to leave me a rating or a review. But that is all for episode 31. I'd love to connect with you all on social, so let's get social on social. I'm on all the good platforms, so I'd love to see you there. But always remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
Tell I can feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are.